have Adam Tesan, the CRO at Chargebee, Jody, Glidden, CEO and co-founder at Introhive, and Fabian Libeau, VP Sales, EMEA at Axonius.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you for joining me. So, the first statement that I would like to address: companies spend way too much on tools they don't need or use. Adam, would you like to start?
It's a true statement.
Okay.
So I think we're a living, breathing version of that. Yeah, I think we're organizationally wide, probably using over 300 SaaS apps. And just in the revenue org alone, there's probably 35 to 40. And constantly, people are bringing new ideas, new tools, and like probably most kind of scale-up customers or companies rather, where it's been decentralized, and so it's a version of it being decentralized. People just bring it in, and I think it swings in pendulums. Like the monolith before was all broken apart to point solutions, and now there's so many point solutions, it's becoming really hard to manage.
Okay, Fabian.
Yeah, totally agree. I think, especially during the pandemic, we worked from home. We tried to do our job better. We didn't have necessary access to the resources we had before in the office because not everything was VPN enabled, and people just tried to get their job done. And so, with that, we just subscribed to stuff. Right? We just took our credit card, and there's this wonderful reporting solution. I can get better reports out of my CRM data or something like that. So with that, we've got tons of potentially unneeded SaaS application. And from I'm an IT security guy, so it's unsanctioned, right? So we can't apply the same security policies you would apply to a proper SaaS application to an unsanctioned app. And so we see a lot of customers really struggling. And the numbers I hear as well is something like the average is 300, 500 SaaS apps per organization, and you think it's just the big guys, but no, especially the young, fast-growing, aggressive organization have this kind of challenge.
Okay, Jody.
My last company was acquired by BlackBerry, and so I was with BlackBerry for a bunch of years back before the iPhone came out, and I remember their whole way of handling things was lock everything down, right? You couldn't install a single thing that wasn't authorized by the enterprise, and what ended up happening from that is there was just a big backlash, and I think that was one of the things that actually caused the iPhone to flourish that much faster when it did, and it kind of like swung, like you said, to the other direction, where then it was the Wild West for a while, where anybody could install anything. And now you're getting, these virtual containers and things like that allow a little bit of structure around the whole thing, where you can still do some things on the outside, but you can still have security on the inside. We also look at it from the other side. As a vendor with a SaaS application, we want to make sure that we're never on that list of things that people cut. Retention rate is really, it's one of the most important metrics we watch. And so we always look at the value. How are we providing value to customers, and how are customers thinking of us in terms of value? So I think that's like a really important thing for customers to think about, and for vendors to think about in all the applications that they do, is like getting it right down to a quantified value. And making sure that that's something that is defensible to CFOs in times like this, right? We're about to go into a recession. We've probably actually been in a recession for about 2 quarters now, and I've been through this. I've seen this movie before, in 2001 and in 2008. I know how it goes. People start to rationalize everything. So the tighter you can have these metrics, the less you end up having a bunch of cuts of SaaS applications, which, if they're useful applications, you want to know how to defend them, and the customers want to know how to defend them.
Okay. Fabian, I will ask you that one. At a time when financial health is critical due to economic conditions, having the right tools and budget can make or break a company.
Again, true statement. I mean, I think what we saw is this, during the pandemic, everything was allowed. right? So we went out, bought all the SaaS applications, and now it's kind of, we see cuts all over the place at the moment, right? We see companies laying off people to, reduction of workforce and all that. And of course, now people also, or CFOs, are looking into, how can I save money with by cutting IT spending? And as easy as it is for SaaS to just onboard it as a service, it's of course also as easy to get rid of it. Right? So we just don't renew with those guys. It's not mission critical, and I think that's one of the critical metrics at the moment. It's customer happiness and all that. Oh no, we can't get rid of it. But again, there's a lot of times where IT doesn't even know that certain SaaS application exists. They just find it on a credit card statement, right?
Okay.
And I think the visibility into where am I spending money on, how can I control costs, is one of those probably unanswered questions, because a lot of organizations don't know about the things they don't know about. Yeah. So which kind of SaaS applications we have? IT thinks it's 100, but they have 300. Yeah. So in times of crisis, you want to kind of have an overview of everything and then make a conscious decision. Right? These are the things we really don't know.
Okay. Adam?
Yeah, I just actually had a chat with my CFO last week, and one of the things he mentioned was, I'm just going to stop all the corporate credit cards and see what happens. Somebody's going to start shouting about mission-critical apps because they're important, and some of the other ones might. I mean, that's a little bit of an extreme example, but I think as I've seen these downturns before, and you're seeing the layoffs starting to happen or hiring freezes, and then the next part you get into is how do you optimize your tool set. It's actually an opportunity, especially for younger businesses that have not done anything but scale and grow and kind of become inefficient. It's a forcing function to become efficient and starting looking at the tools. The tools that you're using, are they mission critical? Do we really need them now? Is this spend worthwhile? I mean, we go through and so mission critical tools, like one of the things that we, as a SaaS company, I think you alluded to this, Jody, churn becomes critical. Downturn starts happening, the customer acquisition becomes less of a focus, and retention becomes a better focus. Like we actually bought a churn deflection tool called Brightback recently, and it plugs into companies and kind of automatically intercepts churns when people are hitting the cancel button. And so you're going to start seeing those types of applications kind of become more important, and then cash is oxygen. So automated tools to collect cash will become important too.
Okay, Jody?
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine how hard it is for a large organization to get a handle on what applications they have and which ones they don't, because even my own personal applications, the different things that I've signed up over the years for, LinkedIn and all these other things, and then you stop using them and it's just still hitting your credit card and you don't even know it, right? So try doing that with we have a customer that has 250,000 employees. I don't know how they can possibly get a handle on it other than what Adam's saying, just shut the credit cards after a while and see what happens. But it's, what we're going to see now. You saw, probably most of you guys saw this week that Coinbase cut 15% of their staff. It's not just staff. When they're doing these same things, they're trying to do the same thing on all the spend categories that they have. So you'll definitely see a lot of pressure. And I think it's when the money is flowing freely, like we've never seen before, and maybe it was like this in 2000, 99, 2000, but what we saw last year felt to me like maybe even beyond that, unprecedented spending. When you see that, people just say yes to everything. People were buying stuff that they shouldn't have been buying, and they didn't even, they hadn't even ran through the calculations on whether or not it was actually going to provide them, any return on their investment. So I think it's going to teach a lot of first-time entrepreneurs the discipline to make sure that they're actually providing value, because that's the only defensible way to hold on to your customers, is if not only you are providing them value, but your customers understand how you're providing them value, and that they can explain it to the CFO when the cut time comes.
Okay. Data integrity and integrations matter. Having all your revenue data in one place, monthly, quarterly, annual reporting. Jody, again.
Yeah, there's kind of two approaches for this. So one is and they're both kind of common. One is take all of the data, put it into a central place. Some people call it a data lake or various different things over the years, but taking all the data and putting it in one place, and then you report from that place or work from that place. Another approach that I've seen that seems to be pretty popular, probably caused by companies like Tableau, is keep your data where it is, and we'll plug into your billing system, your HR system, your CRM, and we'll just bring all of this stuff together, sort of in real time, cache it temporarily, and then create your reports like that. So I think there's advantages and disadvantages to each. When I'll be curious to see how the recent events and the financial implosion that's happening right now have on, because it takes capital to create those data lakes, and less so to do it more the ad hoc way, and they produce there's advantages and disadvantages, but they produce some similar results in some cases. So I think the most important thing is that if you are centralizing everything in a data lake, that you have ways that you've thought through how to keep it all secure in the transfers, in the storage, encryption at rest, encryption at transit, and all those sorts of things. Because you're, in centralizing the data, you're also centralizing the target.
Okay, Adam?
Yeah, I think if you think about SaaS companies now and the way revenue flows into the business, it's not historically just sales driven. Now you've got product-led growth, you've got self-serve, so you've got revenue coming in from different channels. Plug for Chargebee is being able to manage all of those through kind of one system, one billing system, and then I think where Jody was going as well. I mean, we ourselves have a data lake, publish up through Tableau, and I think that does really get it, especially as the organization gets bigger. The type of people that you need to do that properly is expensive, and so hopefully and there's lag time as well in that data flowing from different systems. So the more data you can push out to the frontline people to make real-time decisions, which are typically going to come from point solutions probably that they're working in, the better, and then giving them some guardrails that are probably a little bit more lax in times like this, so they can make real-time decisions, whether it's retaining or acquiring customers. I think that's important.
Okay, Fabian?
Yeah, very interesting question, because at the end of the day, coming from a data security perspective, SaaS is phenomenal, and it's a complete nightmare at the same time. I mean, in the good old times, we had our mission-critical data in the SAP system or whatever CRM system. It was, on-prem. I had my firewall around it, and that was good. Now we've got this SaaS situation where a lot of organizations just trust the SaaS vendor, right? So there may be some security vendor assessment you're going through and ask you, are you SOC 2 certified or ISO certified or something like that? But at the end of the day, we are just too, we're going too easy with that. It's just now, I think last week or the week before, that the Cloud Security Alliance came out with a best practice about how to secure SaaS. It's just now, we have that for a long time, this security posture management for cloud brokers, for, of course, for on-premise security, but it's just now that we're looking into it. And it's just, data encryption, doing transit, on rest. Who's responsible, right? Who's responsible for secure settings in a SaaS app, and what are the best practices there? So while, SaaS is a huge opportunity, and I was reading something about the millennium buyer who is just like, I just want SaaS. It has to be quick and easy. That's phenomenal, but still, from a security perspective, we have to make sure that whatever we're storing there, whatever we're processing there, is secure. So it's the integrity is given, the confidentiality is given, and we see that in Europe with privacy quite a lot. That it is a challenge. Yeah. So I mean, who doesn't in the room just clicked on a SaaS tool and says, "Oh, I'm connecting to your Google or Microsoft account. You're all right with that?" Yeah. No.
I do.
Yeah. Let's just do it. And they say, "Oh, yeah, we've got read-write access to your whatever system." And you're just like, yeah, do it, and then you get something fancy out of it. But it's not, from a security perspective, IT security in organizations can't manage that. They can't control it. And I think that's one of the big challenges we see going forward. While everybody's now focusing on ransomware, there will be something happening around SaaS at some point, because for the threat actors, it's a viable target. Yeah.
Okay. What are the most critical tools as a baseline, Adam?
Yeah, there's. I think the tech stack in SaaS companies is changing just because the revenue models are changing so quickly. The majority of SaaS businesses coming out of the in the B2B space are all reoccurring subscription revenue. There's they reckon by 23, 24, most of the direct-to-consumer businesses are about 75% of them are going to be subscription as well. So the tech stack internally is changing. I don't think your financial stack changes. There's a billing and invoicing stack now. There's the your CRM, marketing automation, and those are kind of main tools. And then beyond that, I mean, there's the tableaus and reporting and BI tools that are important.
Okay, Fabian?
Yeah, again, putting my cybersecurity hat on. I think these days there are certain things we're used to. Multi-factor authentication, right? Everybody uses that, and I mean, you've got your Google app or your Microsoft app or whatever you're using. I think for SaaS, that's certainly from a baseline perspective is a must. But there are certain tools you just should look into to manage your SaaS application, your SaaS environment. There are SaaS management tools out there where you have the whole configuration, a central console that makes it easier to understand the different tools. There's SaaS security posture management out there where you can say, okay, right, we want to control really who has access to what, the need to know, the least privileged things we've done for ages on premise. That's something we have to do for SaaS as well. And of course, what we've done for on-premise situation, the log management, the CM solutions, all that is these days available for SaaS as well, and should be broadened to that. And there's some play in the market that do CM for cloud, for SaaS really, really well.
Jody?
I think anything that provides a lot of measurable value, either in a lot of new revenue or saving a lot of revenue, is a must-have. So we're seeing more of those actually over time. So there's new categories of software that are coming out that we didn't even imagine a few years ago, like things like Gong and Outreach and that in the sales enablement space. There's things like that on the marketing side of things, in finance, contracting now. We used to manage all of our contracts manually. Now we have an ability to just very quickly spot all the special clauses in contracts. Like, none of these things are going to go away when costs tighten down because it's providing us value. So I think those are all really key. There's the things that are behind the scenes for security that you can't lose. Like you were saying, we would never lose Google, in part because of the communication system, but also in part because it runs our single sign-on for everything. We have it kind of intermingled everywhere, and it gives us a better level of security. But I think the other thing that we're spending a lot more time looking at is like, how do we secure the data in all these things? So for us, having things as much as possible in segmented data, you want to make sure that, because we have hundreds of employees, right? And if one of them clicks that link that they're not supposed to click, regardless of the amount of security training they get, someone's going to click that link. And when they do, and they get their credentials, how do you make sure that they have limited access to what they can get at, right? And that's all about data segmentation. And so things that run in private encrypted cloud, in segmented environments, and things like that are things that we're really looking closely at, because breaches can just kill your business. It can completely devastate it. Maybe unless you're, well, I won't name a name. There's been a few of them that made it through, and I just don't know how.
How do you leverage these tools to scale your business, Fabian?
How do you?
How do you leverage these tools to scale your business?
That wasn't on the
No.
pre-question thing.
To scale your business. Sorry for that.
It's okay.
I think one of the big advantages of SaaS is scalability, right? And that's why we're doing it. Yeah. So it's just so easy to add another 1,000 users and not thinking about the implications on your IT infrastructure. I mean, in the past, one of the big challenges of IT was capacity management. Right? So what do I forecast for next year? How much more do I need? Do I buy more? And so on. This all just disappears with SaaS. You can easily now add more resources and you can add more functionality. It may just be a switch inside the existing tool, or it may be that you add just another tool, or I shouldn't say tool because every vendor will tell me they have a solution, not a tool. So another solution to it to make what it happens. But again, this creates a risk because I trust somebody to do the things I want to do, and it's really hard to monitor that. It's really hard to manage that. They will, they will sign that it's all good, and they will give me data, show me it's all good. But because I don't own it, it's a real challenge. But yeah, at the end of the day, SaaS is kind of the magic wand for scalability.
Okay, Jody?
What we think about for scaling our business, it's constantly. I remember hearing this advice from Mark Benioff at a talk that he had given, where he had said, when you're thinking about how to get to maybe twice as big, just think, what if you had to get 5 times as big? What would you do differently? And he'd say, well, we couldn't do that because we don't have enough leads. So, okay, well then, what would you do to get 5 times as many leads, right? And you have to completely think differently to do that. Sometimes it's, well, we don't have enough people. Sometimes it's we don't have the right processes for leads. Sometimes it's a systems issue, or sometimes it's a reporting issue. You can't kind of get into the parts of the business that you can't get the understanding of the business to make the decisions fast enough. But I thought that was something that we kind of took to heart a few years ago when we had heard that, and we've tried to apply it to our business, and try to think of like. It just allows you to think ahead a little bit more on what those things are. Because really, it comes down to, we think, really 3 things that help you scale the business a lot faster. How fast can you find new customers? How can you tweak that win rate to get the win rate, just even a little bit higher? And then how can you grow and retain the customers you have? Because the leaky bucket doesn't work if you can have the first 2 working really well, but if you're leaking customers at the bottom, that doesn't work either. So just really segmenting, thinking about it in those 3 segments, and then looking at everything with that lens of like, if you had to scale even higher than you really are targeting, what's standing in your way? What are those bottlenecks, and just removing them?
Adam?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it was mentioned earlier, like one of the great things that happens when you're scaling is people can move fast, make decisions. It's not centralized. You mentioned, you get into a BlackBerry type organization. There's a reason that they grind along so slowly, is because they've got so many controls. So how do you balance the, keeping that speed and agility of the business, but not kind of swinging the pendulum too far away and locking everyone down and preventing those systems. So we find in the revenue org, one of the things that we do is a quarterly audit on the tools. And what we've learned over time is, it's not only buying the tool, but it's the enablement piece of the tool as well. Like, you can buy all the tools that you want. If you don't train people how to use them, then they just kind of get into shelfware. And so we're constantly looking at kind of adoption rates within the tools that we have on a quarterly basis, and actually built out a fairly robust enablement team to keep that kind of continuous training going. And like, when we do introduce new tools, we don't just introduce it, throw it out in the wild, and assume everything's going to be wonderful. So just that enablement piece, I think, is important as well. And then going back to like the tech stack that you have, you got to, you got to make sure that whatever you're putting in, I think you pointed it right. Like, you want to go 5x, or where you're going to be in not 1 or 2 years time, but 5 years time. And does the applications that you're buying have that flexibility and can facilitate that growth for you, and not going to become a roadblock to it.
Okay. How have recent events changed things for businesses, Jody?
So for us, every time, so we did this exact same thing in 2020 when, for us, for 6 weeks, we've been growing extremely fast, but for 6 weeks at around March of 2020, sales pretty much completely halted. And so what we've always been doing ever since is really focus on not just the applicability of our software to customers, but our applicability of our software to customers in the moment. And so, at a time like now, we start to think about, okay, what's the mix of new customers we're going to find versus selling into our existing customers? We're probably going to shift the mix a little bit more towards our existing customers. They're easier to reach in times like this, right? And then also in times like this, how do customers think about the value proposition? And so it's less about, obviously, one of the things our software does is it helps automate data into the CRM, which saves people a lot of time. That was an interesting concept to talk to people about a couple of years ago. Not so interesting maybe now, right? Now the most important things that we should be talking about is how we can help you penetrate customers that are not answering the phones anymore because we can get you in via introductions. Or how can we use the relationship mapping that we have to help make sure your deals are multi-threaded, so that when right now we're going through the great reshuffle or the great resignation, right? People are leaving. If you're only sold to one person and that person leaves, that's a problem. You're going to churn customers. And so we're thinking about the use cases that are especially applicable in what we do to times like now, and we're going to change all of the messaging and things around that. I think that's the most important thing. You have to stay relevant to the time. It's not really changing so much what you do, it's just changing how people think about what you do.
Okay. Adam?
Yeah, I mean, I think, follow on Jody, I think what happens is for companies, and we'll do this ourselves, is it's, if your customer acquisition channel is going to slow down, we've talked about that retention, one of the things that we did at the beginning of the pandemic, it forced us to look inward and say, how well do we really understand the customers, the sub-segment of customers, which ones are going to be impacted? And so we've already started doing this now, where we're getting more granular into our customer base to try and figure out who's at most risk, which ones are going to be, hurt by this type of recession that we're walking into, and how do we work with them, right? Like, we can pause their subscription for a period of time or whatever we need to do to help them kind of work through it, like we did, going back to the beginning of the pandemic. The restaurants and food kind of industry got smashed really hard, and so we knew that was coming and proactively went and started kind of working with those customers to figure out how we could kind of work through it together and help them when they were going. So I think it's that kind of inward looking and really kind of understanding the customer base. Retention in SaaS businesses becomes absolutely critical, because you are going to see that slowdown on the customer acquisition. And then, for us, we've got a bunch of different solutions, and some of the solutions are just more prominent than others. I mentioned that churn deflection, which helps on the retention side. And then, we also just bought a company that does collection. So they automate the AR process, which is typically manual. And, right now, if you're a small business, there's two things you want to do: is hold on to your customers and get as much cash as quickly as possible, continuously into the business, so you can keep yourself kind of going. So, it's for us, we're talking to our team about, hey, these two tools, beyond just the core billing stack, now are becoming even more important, and they may be just what the customers buy or new prospects need at this particular time, because they're really timely.
Fabian?
Yeah, well, we see that it's very different almost by region, by industry, right? So there's a lot of fear at the moment how the war will impact business in certain areas. There's a fear of recession in general, which is also maybe caused by the war, but by other things. And it is kind of this fear drives people, yes, to cancel subscriptions, to focus their efforts, but still is that it's not just that the organizations trying to make money, it's also that cyber criminals now trying to make money out of this situation. We see that at the moment the spending in security not necessarily went down, it slowed down, but it's kind of been, decisions been postponed, but it's not that people say, oh no, we don't have to invest in security because they made bad experiences over the past couple of years. We saw this, I mean, especially last year, the rise in ransomware. Everybody just went mad on it. I spoke to a couple of people here today, even on the floor, that are in the cyber insurance industry, and people are just not insuring against ransomware anymore, full stop. Well, it's just can't get it anymore. Or the premium is so high that it's almost not affordable. If you go to your CFO and I'll say, oh yeah, the cyber insurance went from 10 grand to 50 grand, and it's just like, why? Yeah, because we can't prove, we can't show that we are protected. And there's certain things where you can't show that you're protected. There's certain things where you can show it. But we see more and more customers now, where the use case, what they want to achieve in IT security is not just having a good score and be good enough for the industry, but really about we have to show that we are doing our job well, and even during a crisis that doesn't change. So do we see but again it's different by region, it's different by industry. Some industries are almost dead because there's nothing happening at the moment. Some industry are just making money like no business before. Don't want to highlight certain industries, but I think we all read on the news.
Okay. Adam, to conclude the discussion, a few words that you would like to say about the whole discussion, just for conclusion?
Look, I think it mentioned we're going into a downturn. I think Jody thinks it's already happened. It might be. I think it's going to be regional. It's going to be industry, but I think it's going to hit us all. And I mentioned at the beginning, it's a real forcing function just to figure out like how efficient are we running as a business? Because when you're scaling and running really fast, that's kind of the last thing that you're thinking about. Not the last thing. Some people should be thinking about it in the business, but it's a secondary thought versus grow at all costs. And so what tends to happen is if you're running a sound business, these types of opportunities are a way to kind of harden and strengthen the business, and the people that survive will come out of this stronger. Unfortunately, there will be some collateral damage through it, but I think there's again, I went through the 2008, 2009. I was fortunate to be with a company that had enough resources, and we spent a lot of that time knowing that our competitors weren't going to be able to outrun us because everything was slowing down. So we turned internally and said, okay, so how do we harden our organization, optimize so we come out of this thing stronger? And I think it's a great opportunity to do that. And hopefully, who knows, kind of how deep it'll be or how long it'll last. But
okay, Fabian.
Yeah, I think we are in a very interesting point in time at the moment. We see the rise of SaaS. More and more processes are now available as SaaS services, also driven by necessity. When COVID hit, everybody was remote. All of a sudden, we had to replace existing process internally with SaaS processes. A lot happened there. A lot of was uncontrolled, unsanctioned, unmanaged, unmonitored. And in times now like this, where it's slowing down, we just have to use almost common sense and say, okay, we have to consolidate. We have to figure out what we really need as an organization. I won't say we hit the wall, but to a degree, the times of the Wild West are over. Now let's turn this into proper business so that an organization can run it as a proper business with the same controls, the same metrics, the same, whatever we have in other areas of IT. And then focus on those things that really help us as a business to be profitable, to show shareholders, investors that we've been the right choice to invest into.
Okay, Jody.
I mean, if you think about capitalism, really, it's we all raise money for businesses that we think are good ideas, and then we hire a bunch of employees, and what ends up happening in the boom times is you have a lot of businesses that probably wouldn't have or shouldn't have made it, but they can just raise enormous amounts of money that are hiring resources away from companies that have a viable product that actually does provide value, and driving salaries up to the point where things become unaffordable and everything else. So, you do need to have these reset times. I was thinking the other day when I saw that people were buying an NFT of an ape for 103 times the average salary of a U.S. person, and I was thinking, that should have been a sign, probably, that we were off the rails at that point. But I think now what happens is, you're seeing layoffs all over the place. Companies will come down in size. Those people are not going to not find jobs. They'll just be fed into the companies that are strong, and that's probably a good thing, that the strongest companies get those employees. The other companies will eventually probably not survive. There will be less, a little bit less competition, which makes the companies a lot more healthy, and it just drives our GDP, which is good for all of our, in the long run, it's good for our economy. In the short run, hopefully everybody can make it through without as much pain, because it is painful for us all. But yeah, we'll do our best to make it through this. But, I think it's amazing when you're in these bubbles. It's really hard to see them until they're over. Then it's obvious,
Okay, thank you very much for today's discussion. It was very informative. It was a pleasure as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.